We are of a folklore heritage. We were conceived in the womb of beautiful words, birthed into a captivating world that we've spent eternity trying to name, tell, retell, and paint. Wrapped and cradled in stories, inzomi namabali. Our words create worlds. They transport, they mirror, they convict, they give lashings and hugs. They create and can never be undone. To hide between the pages of a book is to find pieces of yourself before you even were. Welcome to Turning Pages, the podcast that celebrates African literature from the continent and the diaspora. I'm your host, Vuvu Vena. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Turning Pages with Vuvu Vena. This episode, as you can see from the title, is called Why I Read. 2 years ago when I started my Vuvu Vena Reads platforms, I had a conversation with you guys both on my blog and on my BookTube channel about why I love reading and my introduction to books. So just a quick recap in case you have not heard that episode. Books were introduced to me, I have a strong recollection of books being introduced to me by my late mother when I was very young. To say I was 7 is probably me reaching, but I would want to think that I was around that age. My mom was a lecturer at a teachers training college in Umtata, and I would be the child where during school holidays she would take with to the college library there, and because it was a teaching college, it had a children's book section, and she would sometimes leave me with the librarian, and I would camp out there literally for the whole shift that she had. If it was 8 hours, I'd be there for 8 hours, probably obviously taking loo breaks and going to find some food, but most of the time I'd just be there. I probably could not make head or tail of the books that I was reading at that time, but it was a place that I automatically felt at home in. So libraries do give me that sense of belonging. And it's something that I thank my mom, even when she was around and even in absentia, for having done for me, because it's something that set my life on a certain course. Because if you know anything about me, you know that the profession that I'm in it's got to do with writing. So I write a lot. And reading sparked the love for writing. Writing sparked the love for media and content creation. And so it's just been a gift planted in me that just has kept on giving throughout my life. So people do read for different reasons. All of those reasons are valid. Some of the reasons why I read is obviously for solitude. Because of that, I came to love being alone, and reading was one of those things that I know got my siblings away from me, if I might say. So I'd be stuck in my room reading. Sometimes it would infuriate my mom, but my grandmother, my dad's mom, was one who would encourage it. So I'd love to go visit her over the school holidays because I knew that I could stay in bed and read all day, because it's something that she allowed. I would go through my parents' university books and find like novels. The one time she was laughing at me, that's my grandmother, because she caught me reading a novel that had no cover at all, and I think there were a few pages lost, but that was the only book that I found lying around the house that was intriguing to me. So I read the book and I finished it, whatever was of the book that was meant to be. I'm sure there were like 6 or so pages missing, but it really was something that kept me sane growing up. So that's part of the other thing that it has been for me throughout the years, is that reading has been a place of sanity for me. It's important for me to know that life is not just what I experience in my confines of my everyday routine. So knowing that there is somebody else out there who has written a book, one, and number two, has imagined a life, whether it's contemporary, it doesn't matter what the genre is. So it can be a thriller, it can be crime, it can be fantasy, it can be YA. The fact that somebody has imagined something that holds elements of truth that you yourself have started like piecing together in your own life, and you're finding affirmation through reading these books, or it's helping you to start asking questions about how the world is. That kind of stuff really keeps me sane. And I think through reading, you find that the questions that you are asking, somebody else has already asked, or you find that for centuries, people have been trying to answer the same questions. So part of why I read is for sanity. Part of why I read is to escape, because I think I groomed and exercised the solitude muscle in me growing up, that it is something that I crave and I hunger. I love being alone. And when I'm alone, the one thing that I do is read. I read and I write. That's the only thing that you'll find me doing when I'm alone. Even when I'm telling myself it's time to take a nap, I really struggle. You'll find me reading, or you'll find me writing in my journal. So I read for sanity. I read for escape. I read for solitude, and I read to learn. I read to travel. You know, there's the cliche that when you open a book, you get to travel the world from the luxury of your room or your lounge or your reading nook, wherever you read. And it is true, because there are certain parts of us that are aroused through reading, and the imagination is a very powerful place. You can imagine a place that you've never set foot in. Think, for example, the Harry Potter series in movie form, as well as Lord of the Rings in movie form. Those were made up worlds that we were able to recreate based only on a description on a piece of paper. So you get to go places because you read. And I think that is one thing that writers probably don't own as much, even when you are writing about a place that does exist. So you're writing about a Soweto. For somebody who's never been to Soweto, how you portray that Soweto to them gives them the impression of what kind of place that is. So they can start imagining what Soweto is like. And in this day and age, obviously, of globalization, books are far-reaching. They don't just end in the country where they were created. So it's very important that when writing, that writers do try and help us to tap into places that we might never physically be in. And so I also read to become. So part of that sanity conversation is also taking the pieces, forming who I was before I read the book to who I am after the book, because something about enlightenment does transform us. So it is to be transformed through the reading that I do. I'm definitely not a snooty reader. I've come across snooty readers, and I know y'alls who don't read certain books. How can you be reading this? How can you be reading that? That's not literature. That's trash. That's this. For me, I also read for the appreciation of sight. For me, all of my imagination starts from a point of seeing. So being able to read then sparks the other senses that I've got. So because I'm reading that so-and-so baked banana loaf, let's say, for example, I can then start imagining somebody in a kitchen because I've seen it before. I can start imagining how it smells because it's something that's familiar to my nose. I can imagine what happens in a kitchen when somebody is baking. So if this is a family person baking, I can imagine the sound. So part of reading is basically also an appreciation of the gift of sight. And I think maybe of late, especially since my mom's passing. So my mom passed at the end of 2017, and I started my booktube and book blog in May of 2018. And a lot of that was for me to be able to constantly thank her for something that truly shaped who I am. So when I read, I literally do hope that it is a whisper of gratitude to my mom, that wherever she is, she can see that this one thing is something that has sustained me, because she had the foresight, for God knows what reason, to plant that seed in me, and it has literally been my sustenance in ways unimaginable, in a very crazy way. And I cannot thank her. A million thank yous would never be enough to say thank you to her for obeying whatever it was that led her to plant that seed in me. I am beyond grateful for that. So part of my reading is a way in which I remember my mom, and I let out positive energies to the universe as a form of gratitude towards her and the seed that she left me with, that, like I said in the beginning, continues to give. It doesn't stop. It's a an endless gift what she gave me, and I'm truly forever changed by it. So I did mention that I'm not a snooty reader, so you might be wondering what kind of reader I am. I do love fiction. I love. To say I love fiction, it does not even start to tell you just how much I love fiction. So my preference is always fiction, and under fiction, my first preference is always YA, because I do have a pull towards worlds that have been imagined to exist. So YA I love dystopian fiction because it's also a world that has been imagined to exist, but I'm not particularly opposed to any other genre. So I will read horror, I will read crime, I will read contemporary, I will read historical, I will read sci-fi. I read, it doesn't matter. Me, I will read. But I do have genres that I know automatically are things that I will definitely fall in love with. So when I pick up a book, I see the cover, I can already tell that this is my kind of book. When I read the synopsis, I'm like, yes, girl, you are being bought by me today. And that's just how it flows. So I am a very open-minded reader, but I do have things that I enjoy, and there are certain genres that I am now trying to find written in the African context, kind of like sci-fi. I see in her collection of short stories, Mohale Moshego dabbles a little bit into what she doesn't want to call or label as Afrofuturism, but we'll call it that for now, and that was for me absolutely stunning, finding people speaking South African languages in an Afrofuturism collection of short stories was absolutely divine. Like I can't even start telling you how much that blew me away. So part of reading is also about the creativity and also the statement that you make when you're being creative. It's a beautiful thing. It really, really, really is. So while I read for a lot of reasons, it seems to me that part of why I read is so that I can continue to live. I read so that I can continue breathing and continue to face the world as it is. And I think for me, there is no better therapy. And with that said, thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. And until next time, bye. I'd love to hear your thoughts about today's episode. So why not search for me on social media? On Instagram, I'm Vena_reads. On Facebook and Twitter and YouTube, I'm VuvuVenaReads. And you can also find me on my website, which is www.vuvuvenareads.com. And until next week, I really do love you guys. Bye now.